There's nothing like scuba diving.
You know what I love about scuba diving? The freedom.
Oh, I know.
There's no one around except the boat that brought you here. That's the only thing.
I think, we got pretty fascinated down there by that old shipwreck. I know, we really pushed our time. They said we were supposed to come back to the surface according to our air supply.
Right.
And, I ran out of air just as we got to the top.
It's good to take away a break from our businesses.
It is, because they usually fail. At least I got a credit card in the mail that allowed us to take this trip. Where's that boat?
You filled our names out on that list, right?
Remember we talked to the guy and said he had a great hat? He said our credit card wasn't any good.
Because he scanned it, right, and it said not approved.
That's the credit card. It's called not approved.
Right, it's
a joke. It's like death cigarettes.
Yeah.
This is the credit card called not approved.
Not approved.
How are we going to pay our bill if he doesn't pick us up? In fact, it's better if we owe him money. How long do you think you can tread water? I think I'm going to take off this belt of lead.
There's no way he's not coming back, so we can relax now.
Yeah, we can discuss more important things.
You want to savor every moment like it's the last moment.
That's how you got all of your life.
Right.
Are your arms sore yet?
I'll try to tread water with one arm and one leg towards the other one.
Shark fins.
Oh my God. Did you read that survival book, What to Do Under Various Crisis Conditions When You're About to Die?
Wasn't that written by one of the first lifeguards ever? I think it was the great Cyclonophes.
Cyclonophes. What was his first name? That was his last name?
It was Cyclonophes. He didn't have, that was it. And he had to save people all the time because no one knew how to swim.
No, and even he didn't know how to swim.
He didn't know how to swim.
No.
He developed the long stick.
With a hoop on the end, I think.
He would hoop people.
Yeah.
And pull them in.
Yeah.
And you know what? That is how the first fishing rod came about. Because unfortunately, one time he pulled in someone and all the caught was just a little shark on it.
Right.
And he thought, why did this shark attack? And then he thought, well, what if I had a long stick?
Yeah.
And I put something else on, not a person.
Right.
And see if I could get a fish that way. Bait,
right.
So he put his lunch on the end of the long stick. He caught a fish, and he pulled it in with the long stick. And people don't know about this, but so that was Sophocles. And he wrote a book. It's a little out of date.
Yeah.
And he said, in order to survive drowning, stay close to shore. No, it wasn't a long book either.
No, it was only a page long. It wasn't really a book.
It did have some nice diagrams.
It was more of a pamphlet, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he liked to brag a lot about his long stick.
Yeah.
And then people weren't sure if he was bragging about his member or his long...
Member, another euphemism.
He was trying to be funny, and it did get the best sellers, in Athens for about 2 days. And then I think some Goths took him.
Right.
They were always on the rampage, and they wanted to know, what do you do when you're on the run and you come to a shoreline and they didn't have boats?
Right, they didn't know how to swim either, right?
No, and they said, show us how to get the fish out of the water.
Right.
And they thought he was a genius because he came up with a long stick.
Right.
And so then they kidnapped him and he had to show them.
Right.
And they took all the credit.
It's only been in the past few years that historians have realized that no, it wasn't the Goths, it was this guy.
It was,
Sophocles.
Sophocles.
Yeah, what's easier to pronounce? Sophocles or Goth?
Yeah, they always go with the simpler thing.
Yeah. Didn't they at one point update the design of the fishing rod to the point where, there's a limit to how long a stick you can have.
Well, it depends what kind of trees you got growing in your general region.
You can't hold a 100-meter stick.
No.
Right?
Well, you could with some support. That was also attempted by Sophocles' neighbor. His name was Bronze. He just named himself after a hunk of metal. And he had no last name either. Bronze, he was always imitating everything Sophocles would do.
Yeah.
And so he was so unoriginal that he said, well, Sophocles makes a long stick, I'll make a longer stick. And so, of course, in those days, since no one had any boats or could swim, the longer stick did get the bait out into the ocean.
Yeah, it got the bigger fish.
And it got the bigger fish.
Right.
But then Bronze, he was very determined to catch his fish, and he was one of the first fishermen to get dragged into the ocean.
That's how they kind of invented swimming, isn't it?
People said, what's he doing? I don't know. And Sophocles said, he's slapping his arms on the water, and he's not sinking. And people thought, how is he not sinking?
Right.
He's doing something. And that's when swimming was invented.
Right.
They thought that was it. And then they thought, well, that's what you do. You try to fly like a bird when you go into the water.
But in the water.
Sophocles hooked him with his long stick and dragged him in. He had the shorter stick, but tide brought him in a bit, I think. And then Sophocles threw it in, and he hooked him. He just wanted to give him a good talking to for imitating everything he does.
Right. Well, he was well respected as Sophocles. Bronze, he was kind of a pariah.
He copied all of Plato's works, and put his name on it.
But the thing was, he just crossed out Plato and wrote his name, and everybody knew.
He put Bronze on it. He put bigger block letters. And thought no one. He made the P like a B.
Yeah.
And he tried to.
Well, it's easy to make a P into a B, right? You just got to add that lower loop, right? But the L, it's hard to make an L into an R.
Yeah, that's where he got into
the R into an L into an R. Yeah.
Well, it's not easy being a crook.
People knew that it was really Plato because he didn't cross out enough of Plato, so everybody could see what it was.
Yeah, he was one of the worst plagiarists.
Right.
He's quite known throughout the years by plagiarists who were very good.
Yeah.
And they would always use that as an insult and said, "You got to be kidding me! What are you doing? A bronze?"
Ow! Oh, it was a fish.
A fish?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
But I want to know more about the fishing rod because today's fishing rod has line. That happened. Wasn't that Archimedes?
Well, Archimedes did math, didn't he?
Right, he did a lot of math. He was known for math. Yeah.
Little known is that he had a hobby and it was just collecting string, and he would just ball them all up.
Because he would use string to model straight lines.
And Sophocles said, "Let's go long sticking."
Right.
You know, it helps you relax.
Right.
Apparently.
But he brought a string with him.
Yeah, but he said, "Well, I'll bring my string with me because I might find some string."
Right.
And
I'll add it to the.
I'll add it to the ball.
It's like the biggest ball of string.
It was his favorite hobby. It really relaxed him.
But didn't he pull the long rod out and it got on a piece of a string and the string unraveled?
Well, it was Sophocles hooped a passing marlin.
Right.
And he was getting dragged out into the water. His toga got wrapped at the end of the stick and he got pulled in. Well, Archimedes didn't know what the hell to do. Because he just didn't know what to do. And out of just blind panic, he threw his ball of string out at Sophocles.
But he held on to one end, right? Didn't he hold on to one end?
It unraveled in the water.
Right.
And Sophocles got all tangled up in the string.
Right.
And then he was able to pull
the string
in with Sophocles.
Right.
And even the marlin got tangled up in the string. And it was just a mess. And it was quite a joyous occasion.
Right.
Because it was also the festival of the insect.
Or the locust?
Yeah, the locust.
The locust.
The festival of locusts and breadcrumbs. And so then anyways, they dragged in Sophocles and Archimedes, all the time tangled in the string, and they were able to untangle them, but they couldn't untangle the string from the big stick.
So the big stick kept that string tangled to it. And then someone added little tiny hoops.
Yeah, it was hard to catch a fish with a hoop.
Well, because they just swim right through the hoop.
Yeah, exactly. For the next 500 years, fishermen were trying to catch fish with hoops in Greece. I think the Inuit figured it out.
Yeah,
no one listened to
them. They were very smart to
No one listened to them.
No.
Our air tanks. These air tanks we have on our back.
How are almost out?
Well, they're out of oxygen. Yeah. We gotta do something. We gotta get oxygen back into the invention of the oxygen tank is quite interesting. That was developed in the Ukraine.
I don't think people do it the.
Well, the Ukraine was a person, and it wasn't a country.
That was Karl Ukraine, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Karl Ukraine, but they called him the Ukraine because he was so formidable.
You're right.
And his whole thing, they had people, they'd have competitions. People would push large boulders and lift large things and like lift a piece of plywood with 10 people on over your head. And it was a big festival. They didn't have much. They didn't have television.
No,
stuff.
it was all festivals, right?
Yeah, all festivals.
They had 52 festivals every year, one for each weekend.
Yeah, the Ukraine, his thing was they would throw him into the pool, lay him down, and he would stay underwater longer than anyone.
Right.
Other people would try to beat his records.
But they couldn't do it.
They would drown.
But they found out.
The Ukraine had hidden things down in the bottom of the lake.
Like?
He had a big gourd. He would use that with oxygen.
Turn it upside down and there'd be air in it.
Air in it, yes. And he also had an overturned fruit basket. He could come up and underneath and stick his head.
There's a little pocket of air,
pocket. But it was a while longer than anybody could without it. And then he started drawing different experiments. Took a big barrel and he corked it and he strapped that to his back.
Right.
And he leapt into the water.
It was hard for him to get under though, because he's got this big buoyant object on his back.
I know, and that's when the Ukraine drowned. Right. That was the end of his career. Yeah, he didn't do too much after that.
I don't understand why the big barrel would cause him to drown.
Because of the buoyancy, he flipped sideways.
Oh, I see.
He had it strapped to his back with
so he was face down in the water.
With a pig intestine that he had put into the cork
to lead to his mouth. He used it as a snorkel.
He was going to breathe the oxygen out of the barrel.
Something happened to the pig intestine.
Yeah, well,
didn't it get clogged
seagulls came and ate it. That was kind of like Icarus, flying too close to the sea.
Yeah, he was swimming too close to the surface of the water.
The Icarus thing, of course, was written by another plagiarizer. It was his Braun's fifth cousin. And the Ukraine, he was revived.
Oh, so he didn't drown?
Well, he drowned, but then he was revived.
Right. Oh, that was one of the first examples of life after death.
Pushing on someone's Ukraine's chest.
CPR, yeah.
So they dragged the Ukraine in, and he was, his lungs were full of water.
Yeah.
Then someone tried to take his oak barrel, because they were a precious commodity. There wasn't
a lot of oak. It was the Inuit that started the oak trade back in 2500 BC. For the Ice Age, they went away.
They had all the oak. Yes, and so Ukraine, the oak barrels were dire. They were very expensive. So someone tried to steal it from the Ukraine. Yeah. But the Ukraine had attached itself to the oak barrel to such a degree that they threw the whole thing on the cart and brought him home.
Right.
And then they put him in the kitchen for the next morning because they got so exhausted carrying him around. But they put him down on his belly on the floor with the barrel on top of him.
Right.
And it pressed all the water out of his lungs.
Right, because they saved him inadvertently.
One of the first exercise gyms, the way you would lose weight and get in shape was to tie an oak barrel on you, and they throw you in the water and see how long you could last, and then drag you home, and then let you rest all evening with the barrel on your back. So the Ukraine, he revived and immediately decided that he was onto something. He was undeterred.
Right.
He felt that since the great gods had allowed him to be revived, he thought the great gods
he thought it was Zeus and Hercules and Mars and Jupiter. All the gods back in those days. All the gods were mixed together, like the Roman god, the Greek gods, the Christian god.
There was Bart.
Bart.
He's a lesser known god. He was the god of invention and copyright. But now Mr. Ukraine, then he made his next thing was a big clay flower pot sealed at both ends. It was kind of fragile. See, he just couldn't get his head around that fill something with air and take it down with him would never be enough. I mean, our air tanks are compressed, and he didn't know how to compress air.
Well, back then they didn't.
And then he started doing measurements. He would breathe, and he'd say, okay, I want to stay under water for half an hour. So he would breathe, and he determined that he needed basically the small hull of a ship full of air. So he built a boat, he enclosed the top of it.
Right.
And he put an air hose into the boat, and then he went down, and he was amazed. It worked. That was it. Of course, it wasn't because there was air in the lifeboat. It's just because he had an air tube floating above him, taking the oxygen from the immense atmosphere. But he didn't even know this. For many years, you could see where the Ukraine was in the lake because you'd see him pulling his rowboat, and he'd be walking on the bottom with big rocks on his feet. And the whole time, he thinks it's the goddamn boat.
Right. Why didn't he discover this fact? Maybe he just wasn't a smart man. Is that possible?
That could be possible. He didn't seem to logically understand that it was just that his hose end was being kept above the surface of the water by the boat. Oh, I think what it was, he suffered from, what's that when you fall asleep?
Narcolepsy.
Narcolepsy. He was down at the bottom of the ocean. He had these big stones strapped to his feet.
And he'd fall asleep.
Yeah, and so then he was down there and he woke up, been down there for several hours. And he said, wait a minute. I don't have several hours of oxygen in my boat.
So he finally did figure it out.
You see, and all these things were invented by accident.
Right.
So maybe we'll invent something by accident.
Well, because we're here by accident. Getting into that argument with the boat owner, what was his name?
It was Carl.
We haven't had a lot of luck with Carls.
No, Carls seem to turn against us.
Yeah, that's right. Anyways, we've had a nice vacation.
Yeah, I think that instead of lunch, we're going to be lunch.
We have concluded our broadcast schedule for today. Good night.